Is Hellboy 2 the other good Hellboy movie, or is it overrated? Let's talk about it. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Out of the Storm podcast.
This is Have You Seen, in which we talk about a movie that some of us know well and others have just seen for the first time. This week, we are talking about Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, which I've seen a bunch of times and the two of you have just seen for the first time. So what are your impressions, having seen this for the first time in 2024?
So this is a good movie, I will say, but I didn't fall in love with it like I probably thought that I might have. It does a lot of good things in there. Kind of advances Hellboy's character, gives him kind of like new struggles and sort of like a new arc in there in terms of like where he fits. But it kind of builds on the first movie in terms of like where he fits in this world and who he is in this sort of normal world of sort of people and stuff like that. It has some not so interesting subplots in there. You know, the love story between the fish guy and the twin sister in the movie. And it also has a few kind of felt potential stuff in there, like the whole pregnancy stuff, which we'll get into in a little bit more detail. But I felt that that was just more a convenient plot point as opposed to something that was woven quite well into the story as a whole. So I think as like just quick initial thought before we delve into an actual discussion about it, it's a good movie. Like other people will probably love it more than I did, but I just kind of failed to connect with it as I maybe thought I would.
For me, I had an underwhelming experience. It wasn't a bad movie. It felt like I was watching scenes. And in comparison to the first movie, I felt like the first movie was really good. So this film didn't feel like it was mainly centered around Hellboy. It felt in a way like it was like not equally divided between the characters, but obviously, you know, there was more concentration on his girlfriend, what's her name again, Liz. Of course, makes sense because she was pregnant. Cool, that makes sense. So I didn't have an issue with that. It just felt like the scenes just didn't hit for me. Like there wasn't really any emotional attachment to any of the scenes. Like what I mean by that is like nothing was emotionally triggering for me. Like it was just like, okay, I'm just watching scenes go by. And I was surprised with this film. There wasn't as much internal conflict within Hellboy that I thought it was going to be. Obviously, with how the first film ended, I was like, okay, this one, I'm expecting more like, you know, doubt. Like I'm expecting to see more doubt within Hellboy. I'm expecting him to be like in situations where, you know, it leads to the whole prophecy thing, right? Where he's going to be like the destructor of the world. So I'm like, okay, I'm expecting more of that. I didn't get that, but I can live without it. So let's hope. I was hoping that something else will compensate for that. And I'm guessing the whole, you know, Liz being pregnant was that compensation. And it was cool, but it just like I said, it just felt like I was watching scenes. It didn't feel like I was watching a story for this one. The villains, the antagonist, he was cool as well. And the twin sister, I felt like that was cool as well. There were cool things that I did like about the film. I liked how they were pretty much, the twins were like pretty much entwined, as in like one gets hurt, the other one gets hurt as well. I like that, and I also liked what's his name, Johan. So I liked his character. He like just the look of him is very creative. I really liked his, and I just loved his performance as well. And I love the fact that he was German as well. Because it fit. I don't know why I just fit as well. But overall, I think I had a pretty underwhelming experience, but it wasn't a bad movie. I just think the first one was just way better.
Yeah, when I rewatched this yesterday in preparation for this, I kind of went in expecting, well, I've seen this movie a bunch of times. I like the first movie a lot. I should breeze through this, but as this movie went on, it got more and more difficult for me because it wasn't the movie I remembered. I think the movie that I remembered was the creature effects and the fights and the troll market and all those things that I think are excellent and better than in the first one. The first one was a little bit, people were wearing costumes, and here we had a more fully realized fantastical world, like fairy tale world, I think. But I think the story very much doesn't hang together. And like you said, it's like a bunch of scenes as opposed to a story. And that kind of surprised me a little bit because that was not my recollection of the movie. So my question would be, does this build properly on the first one? And is this a good enough continuation of the first one? Or is this just a bunch of ideas thrown into a movie?
To me, it feels like it's a bunch of ideas thrown into a movie. Yes, some things like logically progress from the first movie. So, you know, in the first one, you had this whole thing of like they're having to go to like their sort of missions in the garbage truck and this and the other, and you had like Hellboy wanting to sort of kind of like feel like he fit in the real world, essentially. And then in this movie, you've got the situation again where he's being asked to sort of be hidden, and then obviously he's then exposed to the world, and then you have like this kind of like interlocked story with the main villain who like his people like went to war with like the humans, and then they had like this big battle or whatever, and then eventually they had this like peace treaty where they kind of like put down this like golden army, and he very like the villain very much felt like his people were like kind of like down and like not at the level that they should be, and not like held in regard. They were like downcasted, essentially. I can't find the right word for it at the moment, compared to where the humans were, and he felt like they didn't have their rightful place in the world. And then obviously you had like that play on Hellboy where again he just wants to feel like he fits in the world and feels like he like kind of like belongs, and that then leads to like his final decision at the end of the movie where he leaves a secret organization or like this like monster fighting organization at the end. And obviously like the list stuff in there where so no there was a whole like relationship, and then they progressed the relationship where now she's pregnant, whatever. So there's stuff in the story that progresses well from the first movie, or like logically progresses well. I just don't think that the execution of it is as strong in this movie as they probably thought it was.
What was missing?
I felt, do you know what? I actually feel like they were too distracted. Like it's great that the fish guy got his side story about sort of his love interest with sort of the twin sister in this, but I felt like that could have been cut. We didn't need to see that at all in there. I just felt like they probably could have done more with Hellboy's conflict in terms of like where he fits in society and in this world. And again, you even have at the end where he doesn't want to kill the villain in this movie because he's very much learning that he's actually like just hunting his own kind and he's killing his own kind and whatever. So I feel like they probably could have played on that a little bit more, but then they just got too distracted with some of the relationship side plots that were sort of kind of going on in this movie, which is a little bit disappointing. And like another thing that I really hated about like the whole pregnancy thing was that, again, that could have been a bigger plot point in the movie, but they did this thing which is really annoying of like the woman saying, "Oh, I have something to tell you," but then they never say it until it's the most convenient time when he's dying and he needs a purpose to live. So it feels like that could have been, again, building on something of Hellboy being a little bit more immature and something of being a boy that needs to grow up in the first movie. That could have then been, and his father being killed in the first movie as well, to then him like continuing that development and then ultimately seeing himself as a father. And they could have like kind of like played off with, with sort of like his development and his relationship with his father and like him wanting to kind of like have something good with his child that comes at the end. So I just feel like too many different ideas and they didn't focus enough on one idea to sort of really execute it really well and tell a really strong story.
And I think it's fine to have a bunch of different ideas in a movie if they support each other. Mm-hmm. And here I thought they kind of fought each other for screen time. Like you mentioned, like the maturity angle. Like in the first movie, Hellboy growing up is the big point, the big thing. But by the end, he's supposed to have grown up, right? And here he regresses again into really immature behavior, and he's jealous and he's childish, he's emotional, and that felt like a step backwards. Like the people writing this didn't see the first movie, which is not the case, right? It's made by the same people, or for the most part, but it kind of didn't feel like progression. It felt like they're going backwards.
No, yeah, and like I said, it felt like they completely just forgot about the first movie and created a whole new movie in a way. Because what I was gonna say, I don't think they should. I think they should have continued the whole prophecy element to it, theme to it, as in like they should have kind of delve into that a bit more. Of course, you're gonna need to see progression. So Liz being pregnant is great progression, and obviously him and the whole theme about him killing his own kind, and obviously the conflict within himself, and you see it within the movie. I think that was good to show, and I think that's a good element to add to the story. But at the same time, there just wasn't enough Hellboy. There wasn't enough focus on him. I'm all for side stories, but there just has to be a story. The side stories just felt like they were just pieces that they were trying to fit in to add progression. But I was like, okay, but like I said, it just felt incomplete. It felt like a very puzzle with missing pieces. There should have been more stakes when it comes to that.
Another thing that doesn't seem to be really thought through is this whole idea of Hellboy being torn between the worlds of humans and monsters, right? Because that also was a thing in the first movie, right? Where he gets to within an inch of opening the gates to hell because he doesn't care about, or the villain has convinced him that he shouldn't care about humanity, and humanity has given him every reason to not care about them, right? Constantly telling him that he's a monster and that he doesn't belong and all of that. But it felt like by the end of the first movie, Hellboy had picked a side, right? He had considered that argument and had said, no, I'm sticking with humans. And it feels like here again, he's going through the same beat, which is something that's from the comics, right? Where there's this whole idea of it's monsters versus humans, and Hellboy is on the wrong side, and he's acting against his own interests by working with the humans and all of that. That's not a central theme, but it does show up at some point. And at least I had the sense that they were kind of again retreading ground, not just like with his maturity. They also retread ground when it came to this idea of him doubting whether he's on the right side or not. Like, did that make sense to you? Like you've kind of mentioned that it doesn't, but like maybe we could talk about that a bit.
The reason I liked it in this movie a little bit more is because it just kind of gave a good parallel to some of the villain in terms of them both having kind of similar like conflicts or similar like things that they were dealing with, and obviously just kind of going about it in two completely different ways. Not less so Hellboy, because again he's on the human side, but he's like kind of like killing his own kind and stuff like that. But I don't know.
So my question is, does Prince Nuada have a point? Right? Does he make sense as a villain? Does his position make sense? And is that a compelling plot or not?
In terms of it being a compelling plot, not really, because I wasn't completely invested in him as a villain, to be honest. Like he didn't really move me. In terms of like him having a point, I can see why he would have a point, because his father commanded this kind of like golden army. It seemed like they were a dominant force in their heyday, and then it seems like his father kind of like gave that all up just to make peace with the humans, where he feels like they're probably better than the humans, and he feels like they should be the ones that are like ruling and stuff like that. So in terms of like his motivations, you can kind of understand it, because you're almost playing like lapdog. It's almost, again, it's like similar to, they're not necessarily playing lapdog, because it seems like there's like this huge segregation where their world and the human world doesn't really interact per se, but it's almost like his father chose to play lapdog to the humans in terms of like making this priestry, and again that's like similar to Hellboy, who's just kind of working for the humans, who was their kind of like hired gun essentially. Yeah. So it did make sense, but the villain as a whole didn't really move me.
And there's also this sense that the humans are not keeping up their end of the bargain, right? They say basically we split the world in half. Humans get the cities, elves get the forests, but humans are chopping down the forests.
I think I missed that in this movie. I don't know if they.
I don't think they make a big deal out of it, but there's the sense of we have a treaty and humans have not honored it. Mm-hmm. Because this whole thing about where the king says it's human nature to kind of to expand in its elven nature to honor agreements or something like that. And then the prince looks around and sees how the elven kingdom is like reduced to like 20 people in some ruins, and he asks, where's the honor in this? Mm-hmm. And I think that has the same problem as Ocean Master in the Aquaman movies. It's the same deal, where Ocean Master had the same grievance, right? That the surface doesn't respect the underwater kingdoms, and that he's going to war against them and he wants to wipe them out because there's no coexisting with the surface people. Except he's hiding from the surface people, and he's not given them a reason to even notice that like Atlantis exists. Mm-hmm. And here I didn't see any attempt by the elves to point this out to humans, right? Like if there had been, like you could imagine a scene where there's like a session of the United Nations, and then the elves crash it and pull out this 3,000-year-old or 1,000-year-old contract and say, here you haven't been upholding your deal, you retreat from all the forests, otherwise there's war, and then they get laughed out of the room because nobody knows who the elves are. Like that would at least be a motive. But I think that's completely missing here, where you can't complain that somebody doesn't respect your position if you've never told them your position. Mm-hmm. And I think that completely kills the villain.
There wasn't really much of history that was shown between the humans and his people. It was only like a couple of words said here, and then obviously when he ended up killing his dad, obviously you heard a bit there as well. But in terms of like just seeing that world and seeing that story between the humans and his people, like there wasn't really much besides obviously the storytelling when obviously Hellboy's dad told him the story. No, it wasn't Hellboy's dad that told him the story. It was it Hellboy's dad that told him the story?
Professor Broom told him the story of the Golden Army.
Yes.
As a child.
Yeah, so you see bits here and there, but not enough to make like for us to be engaged in that storyline.
I think the scenario is interesting enough and makes sense. It's just that not enough attention is paid. Like he goes from being in exile for 1,000 years directly to let's start killing humans because they're in violation of this treaty that they don't even know exists. So that is kind of the problem. And then that same problem kind of carries over in this whole idea of him trying to flip Hellboy's allegiance, where he releases the forest elemental in the city and it starts rampaging and killing people. And then he has this impassioned speech about Hellboy could be a king and he's serving the wrong people. And if you kill this forest god, the world will never see another one like it. But you unleash this thing in the middle of a city where it would kill people. Like you made it a target and it's not humans' fault if they try to protect themselves, right? So like I thought this whole scenario just made zero sense. Especially since it's supposed to be like if you watch that scene where Hellboy is on the ledge holding the human baby and Nuada is trying to convince him while at the same time so Nuada is whispering in his one ear while Johann is yelling in his other ear to shoot the forest god. And that is supposed to be some big dilemma. And I just didn't like that should be the payoff to a movie's worth of build-up to show the two arguments or the two sides of that argument. And to show why Hellboy is elite, like why Hellboy has one foot in each world and stuff like that. And that is all completely missing. I thought.
I was gonna say it's funny you say that because when they did release the Elemental kind of God or whatever it was, I did feel like this is probably like the final like battle that should be happening in the movie, but it seemed like it was happening like in the middle of the movie, and I was a bit like, okay, this. Obviously, I think you added like some good context to it, but I remember like watching it, feeling like. It seems like it's coming a little bit too early in the movie for sort of what we're watching at the moment.
I think it's okay if that is kind of the pivotal moment where Hellboy has to make the decision and then the big climax is defeating the prince, again, which is kind of what happened. But yeah, that seems like it should be like the big culmination of Hellboy's story, right? Where he has to make a decision and whichever sides he picks, that side wins, and that's either humanity or it's the monsters. Yeah, I just didn't buy it. I think for something, especially since you're doing this beat again, like he's already rejected his nature as a devil in the first movie, right? So I didn't understand why he's again tempted, right? Like what exactly has the BPRD done that they didn't do to him in the first movie? Like in the first movie, they treat him like a monster, they lock him up in a vault, they just use him as a weapon to be pointed at something dangerous, but he still chooses humanity, right? And I just didn't see at all in this movie why he was at that point again.
Personally, for me, I don't necessarily have an issue with that. I just don't think the temptation was great enough. That's why I feel like it was underwhelming, because it was like, okay, if there was greater temptation when it comes to showing why it's better for you to be on the side of the monsters or the human, then the humans, I wouldn't have had an issue with that. It's just there was only one scene where there was temptation where obviously he was against the freaking monster. I don't know what the hell that monster was, but where he was holding the baby with a tail in that scene. So I was like, okay, cool. And obviously seeing how the people reacted to him was like, all right, fine. It's just that one bit of temptation. And then that's it. So I was like, damn, like there wasn't any build up. There wasn't more build up to it. There was nothing. There was just that one scene that was supposed to be,
When they go to the troll market or kind of like the monster market or whatever it was, is that like Hellboy's like first time kind of like seeing that many different like monsters, kind of just like living life and kind of like going back the day to day? And I can't remember whether he was like kind of like shocked or surprised by it or whatever, but I feel like that would have been like a pivotal moment to kind of see the kind of like juxtaposition or the two different sides, how like maybe the humans are living a certain way, they kind of like living this kind of above the surface, they like have abundance, they have whatever, and then they maybe show kind of like the monsters who are a little bit more downtrodden, who are kind of have to like scrape to get by. But I can't remember that maybe too well, so I don't know, really you can kind of add a little more context for me.
Like within the context of the two movies, I think it's the first time he's seen monsters that aren't his friends or that aren't some danger that needs to be killed.
Yeah.
I think it might be that he's usually around humans enough that is novelty for him, but I didn't think that was shown in the movie. Like it's not like he immediately starts picking fights with people, right? Even to the point where one of them just dies in a gruesome way by being dragged into these two rolling grinders, whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
And that was the henchman of Nuada, but so there was a reason for that fight. But he immediately starts picking fights, right? And he's not in awe. He's not doubting himself. He's not like that would have had to actually be in the movie if that was the point.
So one more thing I was a bit confused about. Did you guys? Well, for me, I didn't feel like there was enough effort for them to save their peoples. Like the scene where I don't know what it was, but those fly things that
the tooth fairies.
Yeah. The tooth fairies. Okay.
Yeah, they explain that they're called tooth fairies because they eat the teeth.
Yeah,
like they eat bones and they go for the teeth first. I thought they were awesome. The actual creature design, and this is wonderful. I think that's what I remembered initially, and that's what I latched onto initially. So what about them? What about the tooth fairies?
They were good. I actually like that scene. I just realized, like, even though they're for the people, they don't really go out their way to protect their people. Like the guy that Hellboy, like a lot of the times, like Liz, like just the guy that Hellboy was with and the guy that Liz was with, it's like they're really like they died gruesomely. But it's like they had enough time, like Hellboy had enough time to kind of like try and save them. The same with Liz. And I don't know, and I don't know if this was just in this movie or if it was like a recurring thing that happened in the first movie. But in this movie, it felt like there were times where they could have, even though they're for the people, they could have saved their people, but they just didn't like make the effort to. Is that like intentional or
who's they?
When I say they, I mean like Hellboy, Liz, the fish guy, not really because he doesn't really have like there's not much.
Yeah, I mean half of them are humans, right? Like Johan is a human medium where a seance got out of hand, and Liz is a human who happens to be a pyrokinetic. And Abe, I don't think they go into who Abe is exactly, but like most of them are at least partially human, right? But yeah, like there's this whole idea of monster rights is not really established, right? Like it's not like and I've like we've seen this in other stories too, right? Where like you could imagine a situation in which the BPRD is imprisoning monsters just because they're monsters and not because they've harmed anybody, or like, but that's not the story, right? I just think if that was supposed to be the point of the story, it would have needed to be developed a whole lot more, and there needed to be a believable internal conflict in Hellboy, right? Something for Nuada to kind of latch onto. And here it seemed to come not exactly out of nowhere, but it felt like that was a settled question.
It just feels like the movie maybe placed too much importance on some of the side characters and thought that they were more important in this movie, to be honest.
And then we mostly get slapstick. Like I think Johan is a really cool character, and he's much cooler in the comics as well. He's kind of a joke, but there's cool stuff going on here, right? And this whole thing about somebody being all about the rules and Hellboy being all about getting the job done. Mm-hmm. Like that has all potential, but almost everything with Johan is just slapstick.
Yeah, it did lead to a good fight though. The one where he like possesses the
locker room fight. Yeah.
Locker room fight. That was great because I did think when Hellboy broke his glass, I was like, oh, like has he killed him or what? But then it led to a great moment, and he set up a lot of like some of the good jokes in the movie as well, which is good.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the bottom line of this movie is that it's some very cool scenes. Right, we've mentioned the troll market, and I think that is a wonderful sequence. Everything to do with the elves, I think, looks great. There's this physicality of the magic. Like this, the crown has moving parts and looks like clockwork. The Golden Army has like these internal gears where there's a lot of going on kind of in the details. The forest god is a cool design that's straight out of right off the page. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. It's just not a coherent story. And I think, for me at least, I liked this movie a whole lot more when I was all about the monster designs. And the more I started caring about story, the less impressive this movie is. And that's really a shame because I went into this expecting to revisit a movie I really like, and it really fell flat for me this time, which was really surprising. And I think it's because of the story.
Do you also think another problem with this film that it was trying to be too funny? Because for some reason I felt like there was a lot of jokes in this one, which is fine. It's all right. It's just when it came to like the serious moments, it kind of felt hard to take that serious. Not take it serious, but just take it in. when it comes to that get serious tone, it just felt like it was flattened a bit because, like I said, this one just felt a bit. It felt like there was a bit too much comedy going on.
Yeah, and it got in the way of the story, right? Like you can have jokes that kind of push the story forward or that result from the story. And here I kept waiting for them to finish the joke so we could move on with the story, which is not where a movie wants to be. How did it stack up against the first one? Like if you're having just seen the first one and then just 2 weeks ago and then this one just now.
It's two different movies for me. Like I said, the first one was just way better when it comes to the story and my engagement levels when it comes to that story as well. I just felt like I was more invested in that in comparison to this one. This one, just like I said, felt like watching pieces and they didn't go off for me what I wanted them to go off, which was obviously Hellboy's prophecy.
It felt a bit like 4 episodes in a season of Hellboy. Like if there was a season with 10 episodes and we just watched 4 of them.
One thing I did like though, I did like that we saw more of Liz because she was an interesting character in the first movie. I didn't really want to see like the lengths of her power and how, just how powerful that she can get. And I think that's something that they didn't really show in this one because I think they should have showed that as well. Like, the limit, like, her at her boiling point. Remember like a scene with X-Men, right? One what's her name? Was she Phoenix or something like that?
Jean Grey.
Yeah. I love the build up to her story because it was like you saw glimpses of her power, and I thought that was going to be similar with Liz. I thought they were going to do that where you see glimpses of her power, right? So I think they should have did the build up to Liz and her story and her power. So that's that was a bit disappointing.
I feel like the pregnancy thing was contrived, man. I feel like it was just a convenient plot point to have something to bring him back when the Hellboy was dying because, like, she finds out she's pregnant. It really annoys me when movies do this, when like the character clearly has something to say, but then they keep finding a way for the character not to say it, even though it should be the most simple thing. It drives me crazy. I understand like situations like that can happen, but it's just like not logical, and you kind of like take away from like really interesting like stories like telling that you could tell, because like Hellboy finding out that he's about to be a father like really then like adds a lot more to like the way he's thinking, the way he's acting, the way he like deals with certain situations, the way he even looks at the kind of like the German guy who's like trying to like have like order and stuff like that. Like it just like then informs a lot more things about his character in the movie, and I just feel like they just wasted it like really, and it's just like so frustrating. And and again like it was so obvious. Like to me it was so obvious once they kind of like did it a few times where she didn't mention that she was pregnant, or she stopped the fish guy from saying that she was pregnant. It was just like, okay, they're gonna wait for like an ultimate moment where Hellboy's completely down, and then they're gonna like say it, and it's gonna be his like motivation to then kind of like save the day. And I was be like, it could have been more than that. It could have been more than that in this movie, but it wasn't. And Liz as a whole, as a character, I don't really care for her like that, to be honest. And I understand you like her powers, Jonathan.
That's not that I like her powers. It's the way that she was introduced. Because you could see that she had a lot of trauma, and you could see there was something in her. That's why she had some similarities. For me, she had some similarities to Jean from X-Men, because it was like, of course, they're two completely different characters. One's more emo-ish and the other one's more normal.
Yeah.
But they still had that, like, in terms of like similarities, they had like that power within them, and they still had that trauma within them. And I thought they were going to build off that and create a story revolving around that, and slowly show the build up to reach her potential. You know what I'm saying? So we didn't really that's what I think Liz was missing, was potential. Like there wasn't really nothing to her story. I understand your point with the whole pregnancy thing, but at the same time, it's like, okay, the issue, the good thing and the issue that I have with the pregnancy thing is, firstly, the pregnancy kind of eliminates the whole potential building for Liz, because it's like, okay, now, so pretty much her purpose was to be Hellboy's baby mom. So okay.
Sorry,
but
the fact that she was having twins is what really annoyed me at the end of the movie. I was like, okay, whatever.
But at the same time,
it isn't really so that kind of is an example of something where, on the one hand, all the characters in this movie were much better realized than they were in the second one, right? It's like the budget version of everything from the first movie, I think. And that is a little bit, like, we've been very negative on this, but I think the problem, what it all comes down to when you boil it down to its bottom line, is, on the one hand, the characters are less interesting versions of what they were in the first movie, because they were all better realized, had more interesting stuff going on in the first movie, I thought, especially Liz, but also Abe. And then we also don't take that into interesting places, right? Characters are kind of regressing, and they're either regressing or spinning their wheels, and we're not going forward, really. I think that's what it comes down to for me, and that's why I'm just not as interested in. I'm just not as interested in movies where I turn the sound off and just watch the fights. But those fights are cool, right? Like, the sequence with the Tooth Fairies is cool. The fight against the Forest God is cool. The fight between Hellboy and Nuada at the end, I thought, is really good. The fight against the Golden Army is good. Like, all of those are good. Everything looks great. It's just not in service of something interesting. To me, that's the bottom line.
But kind of just like quickly going off what I was going to say, the reason why I did like Liz being pregnant, I think they should have, even though I mentioned cool, like, it does minimize Hellboy's, it does minimize her character, because she's okay, because like, when it comes to like her purpose in the film, was like, oh, okay, her purpose was just to be a baby mom. But at the same time, it could have been used in a more utilizing way if it was told sooner. So the reason why I liked it, because like that kind of forces Hellboy to mature, and that's one of the things that they're trying to do in this movie. Like, that's one of the things that's, I'm assuming, like, one of Hellboy's goals is to mature. Liz told him sooner that she was pregnant, and that would have like altered Hellboy's like decision making and the way that he moves. So there would have been more internal conflict with himself. Like, okay, maybe I should act like this, and then he would have been watching over Liz a lot. That could have created a conflict between them two. And yes, I think if that was introduced sooner, then it could have created more problems, as well as internal conflict of him actually trying to force himself to mature.
Yeah. What if the baby he held in the big showdown with the Forest God was not some random human baby, but his baby? That is kind of half human.
I was going to say, like, that would have, like, if they had a situation where they told him sooner, and then he has to think about, like, not just himself, like his baby, and like, what side will his baby like sit on? Will his baby be accepted on which side? Any other, like, that then adds to some of the greater storytelling or like the bigger storytelling that's going on in the movie, but it doesn't. It's just like, ultimately it's just missed opportunity. But
yeah. I think we've beaten a dead horse a little bit, right? Like, there's only so many ways you can say, well, the story is not great. Did this movie change your expectations of the upcoming Hellboy movie?
I kind of want there to be less romance in the next one, and I want it to be more focused on Hellboy as a character, because I feel like a lot of how he was going about in like the first two movies, and like kind of like what really was like kind of like driving or like defining him, was his love for Liz, and I was like, okay, it's cool, but I wasn't super invested in it. So I kind of hope that they maybe take some type of I don't know how like big she is to him in the comics, or whether like she has to be there every single time, whether like she's like the Mary Jane to sort of Spider-Man or whatever. But I don't
think she's in that movie. It takes place long before they meet.
Okay, perfect. That's fine. So in that case, I hope we have like a bit more of a deeper exploration of Hellboy as a character, because that's what I'm there for. I'm there to like, like get to know Hellboy, and like, and again, someone that's not familiar with the comics and someone that's only watched the movies for the first time, I can imagine that there's more stuff in there that they could bring out, and I just hope that we have a little bit more focused story in Hellboy.
I'm similar. I think just a focus on Hellboy himself is about time. It kind of gets drowned out by all the other characters in these two movies. And then the 2019 version just gets him wrong completely. They make him even more immature and extremely obnoxious in the 2019 version, and that kind of killed it for a lot of people, including me. So we're kind of due for just a more serious, more down-to-earth version of Hellboy, I think. I think the first movie does fine. And I think there the theme of maturity and growing up and all of that is there, but it's not obnoxious. But here it becomes obnoxious, and then in 2019 version it becomes obnoxious again. And hopefully the irony is like we're getting a younger Hellboy, but we're also getting just a focus on him. And it doesn't look like the movie where there's a lot of jokes. It seems very somber, very down to earth, and I think that's a valid take on Hellboy.
Is there no concern about him losing his maturity, like his the immaturity that defines his character, if they take it more serious?
Well, it doesn't really. Like, Hellboy is pretty serious normally. He doesn't. Like, he's like, this whole immaturity thing is kind of an invention of the Del Toro movies. And it's not something that's really from the comics. Like, he's kind of the straight man that shows up and just speaks truth to power, which usually is some kind of witch or demon or devil or something.
Yeah.
He's not jokey. He's not a source of drama. He's the most down to earth person in the story usually.
Okay, interesting. I thought that was like a character defining thing. I thought that was like one of the character beats that like had to be. But okay, that's good. Good. That's good to know. So that gives me a little bit more hope for the movie coming up.
Yeah, and that kind of seems to be what really divides people when it comes to these movies, like Hellboy 1 and Hellboy 2, The Golden Army, because some people really like it because of how out there it is compared to what you would normally have gotten in the 2004 and 2009 movies. And then the other side is people who really want a Hellboy off the page and say we've never gotten like a correct version of the character. And we'll see if that second group gets their way in the Crooked Man.
I think that's the end of the discussion. Unless anyone else has anything that they want to add their 2 cents in. Okay, cool. Well, guys, thank you for tuning into today's episode. Let us know what you think. Actually, no. That's Hervey's job. I apologize. Hervey G's.
Yes, let us know what you think in the comments down below. Did you love Hellboy 2? Is this one of your kind of like classics of the noughties? And of course, let us know what you think about our opinions of the movie as well. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and of course, support us on the journey that we're going on.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. We will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.